Great. Hello, everyone. Hopefully everyone is refreshed and ready to go after some coffee. We're going to try to keep it lively for the next 30 minutes. My name is Erickson. I head up our travel and hospitality category over at Samsung Ads, which is an audience, connected TV audience platform. We've been in business for about 7 years. We're the data monetization division of Samsung Electronics. We started getting into the travel space about 3 years ago. That was my first e-tourism back in 2018, 19, if math is right. And for the last 3 years, particularly in the last year and a half, we've been really leaning in with all things travel, helping destination marketers like yourself leverage our audience data to have more informed CTV campaigns. We've been working with our partners over at Michigan, MMGY, and Arrivalist, and thought we'd get on stage today and talk a little bit about that. So before we jump into it, I'll do some quick introductions.
I'm Ktimene from Arrivalist, VP of Sales and Industry Relations.
Hello, I'm Kelly Wolgamott from Pure Michigan.
Alana, Patton, I'm with MMGY Global.
Great. So before we jump into the Q&A and the panel, we thought we'd set the stage a little bit with some foundational information about the evolving TV landscape. I think there's this perception out there that TV is dead and no one's watching TV anymore and everyone is just binging Netflix 24/7. And the reality is it's just not true. While TV is declining, people are watching less TV on a daily basis and a monthly basis. Some of our data shows that less than 3 hours a day is consumed, and there's been a 22% decline of viewership in the last several years, and that has been continuing. It's not dead, but there is a beneficiary of that viewership. The way that we're watching content is just changing, right? It's still watching it on hopefully a 65-inch Samsung TV, but we're watching it in a streamed environment, right? And so there's going to be a couple acronyms throughout this. AVOD is one of them, ad-supported video on demand. People are watching that, still the same TV, but again, streamed. And our data is showing that over 70% of our Samsung universe is watching this AVOD content. SVOD, you can think of it subscription-based. That is the Netflixes of the world. It's the Primes of the world. But for the first time, we're actually seeing there's been first time in last year there's been a 10% growth in ad-supported content, while streaming or subscription-based content has seen an 11% decline. And what that means for advertisers, there's this opportunity to tap into audiences that you can target on the big screen with a little bit more meaningful activation and, more importantly, measurement. Anyone have a Samsung Smart TV? Hopefully about half the room. That makes sense. Good. If not, friends and family discount, hit me up. But this image should look somewhat familiar for most of you. This is, if you're watching your Samsung Smart TV, you hit the Smart Hub, this bottom third menu. That's your discovery. That's how you watch all of your content, or you can find all of your content. We're seeing about a 70% year-on-year growth of Smart Hub launches. So people are watching less of the MVPDs or the cable, and again, watching it more in this streamed fashion. There's also an opportunity for brand marketers before they go into their content to hit them with an advertisement. As you can see, that's something that Pure Michigan taps into. But anyway, all this is important when you think about scale. Right, especially with some of the DMOs, and you have some more of the geo-targeted campaigns, and you're only activating across maybe a couple drive markets. Scale is important. So Samsung went in business 7 years ago because we are the #1 TV manufacturer in the U.S. We have over 60 million smart TVs. We're the #1 market leader with another acronym, ACR, Automatic Content Recognition. That's the technology built into the firmware of our TVs to understand who is watching what, where, when, and how. And we're doing that and reaching over 100 million connected consumers in the US. All right, enough of the muscle metrics and about us. I promise we'll make sense of it. What does it mean for all of you? Well, like I said, when we went into business about 3 years ago in the travel space, we realized, as we were hearing from a lot of the partners we were working with, a lot of the demos is great, the targeting's great, but the old adage of heads in beds and butts in seats and feet on streets or destinations. That's what we care about. How is your targeted campaign? What is that going to do for us on the output? This partner Arrivalist kept surfacing and surfacing, and so we established a first of its kind at the time partnership with Arrivalist, and I'm going to pass it over to Ktimene to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Ray. Hello, everyone. And all those hands that were raised before, that's actually really important to Arrivalist because you have market share and scale in smart TVs. With Samsung, that means we are able to measure more. This is significant for two reasons. One, you have an excellent alternative to those walled gardens that are so limiting and have bizarre attribution models. This is going to give you a more immersive format that is truly measurable. Second, at Arrivalist, we want to help lead our clients into the cookieless future. There is some trepidation around cookieless and what that means in terms of measurement. And what you can see here is that we do see cookieless measurement skyrocketing. How are we able to observe this? One, Arrivalist is measuring digital media. We look at exposures to physical arrivals in destination. And we want to measure as much of that digital media plan and beyond, even out of home, as possible. So those media dollars are following consumers. Consumers are spending more time in their living rooms. The media dollars follow them, and then what Arrivalist tries to do is measure as much of that media plan as possible. Much of this growth and anticipated growth will be comprised of connected TV and OTT. So a bit about Arrivalist and CTV measurement, just to take a step back. For the past 4 years, we've been providing lift studies. Now, lift studies are across all industries. I don't care if it's automotive, CPG. A longitudinal lift study is going to be the gold standard, the best practice in media attribution. So longitudinal lift, you're looking at target groups and control groups. Why is that important? Well, 2 past sessions today talk about keeping vendors honest. You need a control baseline to keep your vendors honest, right? So it's not an inflative metric that has no meaning and no context. When you have the control baseline, you establish a lift. Another best practice is multi-touch point attribution, not first touch or last touch. You want all the credit along the way. So Samsung gets their credit, other vendors get their credit as well. What we've done is take that industry best practice and specialize it for travel and tourism, what matters to them. So incremental arrivals and destination for some, increased length of stay for others, depending on what your goals are. Are you reaching carrying capacity and you care about stay lift? Or are you just trying to recover from the pandemic and get more visitors to your destination? So we've been doing all this for the last 4 years. What's really exciting is that we're expanding our portfolio of channel partners and measurement partners. And it's fantastic. We can measure with Samsung Ads, Smart TV, as well as others, because this means we can report back to you on what's effective in your media plan. So if you're at a DMO or an agency, make sure you're asking for the best practice and also that you're working with partners that allow themselves to be measured. If they don't want to be measured, they're either technology laggards and you need to push them along, or they have something to hide. So ask questions, be annoying. How does this work? So you may be sitting there wondering, well, how can you connect the dots between CTV exposure in my living room and a physical arrival in destination? So this is a peek under the hood, how it works. In the case of Pure Michigan and Samsung, Pure Michigan engaged Samsung ads. Those ads were eventually placed, and viewers saw those across the US. So what we have to do for any kind of CTV, OTT, out-of-home measurement, someone said, oh, we're not going to give away our secret sauce in the last session. Well, this is actually how we measure out of home as well. So, surprise. It's the same thing. So we use a device graph partner that resolves identities called LiveRamp. And LiveRamp helps to kind of connect those dots between household exposures, those anonymous identifiers of those in that household, and those that match up with Arrivalist's panel. Where that overlap or match rate resides, we're going to measure those who were exposed to the ad for Pure Michigan via Samsung Smart TV, and those who are not exposed, who match up at the zip code level. Look at those two groups, which which visitors went to Michigan, and report back to you. So that's how we measure all sorts of media beyond the cookie, is working with partners like Samsung, but also relying on LiveRamp and other device graph partners. So in the case of this Samsung campaign, we did see something called Arrivalist, which means incremental visitation to Pure Michigan. And we also saw something called stay lift. So each of those visitors, compared to that control group, is spending longer in the destination. So I don't know if anyone wants to comment.
So sorry. Got my little question over here. Yeah, I mean, really in layman's terms, it's exactly what Ktimene had just said, is that, they're sitting in their living room, they're watching great content on their Samsung TVs and saw a Pure Michigan ad and ended up going to Michigan, which is ultimately, what we're trying to do is prove our media works. So let's jump into the panel a little bit. That's a little bit of a stage setting. I think we can go to the next slide, or it might even just be, oh yeah, that's that. Okay, let's get my questions here. Okay, so hi. So for travel, there's no doubt about it. Travel's roaring back. We've talked about that. However, the world we now live in looks very different to how it did pre-pandemic, not just culturally, but technologically. What are some of the major differences you're seeing in consumer behavior and how Americans are planning to travel moving forward?
I can jump in. I think there's a couple of things that we're paying really close attention to. One is, where consumers are placing their priorities. We know that they're still very focused on getting out there and having those travel experiences. So that's coming, at the cost of, they're just prioritizing it above other expenses in their life, especially as change things. We're also keeping a really close look on those travel planning behaviors. That's something that's been a big thing that we've been focused on throughout, is getting back to those norms and how people are planning based on how they were planning pre-pandemic. It's really a big thing that's been informing our seasonality from a campaign perspective.
Yeah, and I would just also note that, as everyone knows, everyone is burned out, right? We've been hearing about the burnout and the need to really provide those travel experiences for individuals that, allow them to just, sit back and relax and really disconnect. And we've been working really hard on the campaign with MMGY to make certain that we're targeting and showcasing those type of travel experiences within our campaign efforts.
Yeah, and just to play off what you're saying, I could talk the next hour on how all the visitor behaviors have changed. But something I noticed just recently, we measure something called days to arrival. So from that first media touch point all the way to the physical arrival in a destination. And it has become more erratic, partly because of the pandemic. But I think what I'm noticing is condensed time to arrival. And what I read that as is there's this uncertainty, when is the next pandemic going to hit? And I think people are eager to get out while they still can. And so they're more responsive in a way, at least a segment of them are. So this condensed time to arrival is like, okay, I want to check off the destinations on my bucket list. So the time to get in front of them to plan is now.
So talking about getting out, with Pure Michigan, Kelly, I'll direct this one at you. I think there was about a $23 million budget at play for Michigan's campaign. What factors have shifted over the last 2 years that impact how you put that to work?
Yeah, a lot. So I think, from our standpoint, budget's always a big concern, and it's extremely positive that we do have a good budget this year to promote Michigan as a travel destination. We did make an agency shift. I think that was, one of our biggest moves this year. After 15 years with a same agency on Pure Michigan, we moved with partners with MMGY. which was critically important. And I think something that we needed from a brand standpoint to have that depth of research opportunities and understanding of that audiences. So part 2 of that is continuing to define those target audiences and expand more based on, those audience sets that are appropriate for a Michigan that would be appealing for them for a Michigan travel experience. And how can we define that differently? So we're working hard on those touch points, and also, maintaining that relevancy for the channels that we choose, like a Samsung TV touch point, and working with Arrivalist. Those data metrics are extremely important to us. TV has always been an important component of the campaign, but now that we can leverage, the metric side of it to really solidify who's responding to our ads and who is actually coming to the state, and we can get some further insight on that. It's just another great touch point for us to further, the depth of our campaign metrics.
Got it. So, Ktimene, you spoke a little bit about it, the methodology, and looking under the hood. We don't have to go too in the weeds of that, but I do think that's important. You guys have seen some impressive measurement and output from recent campaigns, including with Pure Michigan, as well as a dramatic increase in arrival rates in state. What has been driving these results?
Yeah, I think in terms of arrival lift, but especially stay lift, just to kind of take a step back, that metric in particular. Destinations that are a little more focused on yield over volume, they want to entice those visitors to stay longer. So at Arrivalist, we're on the kind of the receiving end of the results often, and we're trying to figure out what they mean. What was the strategy that got you to these excellent results? And in the case of stay lift, I think it's 2 things. One, it's the targeting that was available for this campaign. Through CTV, you kind of get the benefits of TV with that digital targeting capability. So there's that hitting the right person with the right message at the right time. But I think it's also the creative. The creative can't be just about getting the visitor there. It needs to delight them or surprise them with something they didn't know about the destination. So enticing them to stay longer by surfacing up that, getting them to do that one extra, let's say, guided canoe tour or snowshoe tour. What is that one incremental behavior? It could be shopping. It could be a meal. But if you're not focused just on volume, it's more on yield, or even the same number of visitors who are staying longer, probably making more of an economic impact. The creative is doing that heavy lifting. And we're just glad that we can measure those results and work with the agency and the client to understand how those were produced. And that happened for this campaign. There's about an 8% stay left.
So creative drives metrics. Is that what you're saying?
In essence.
Alana, you took on the account, was it a year or so ago?
8 or 9 months. It feels like longer. But.
So right at the beginning, or maybe toward the tail end of this explosion of streaming TV, how has that involvement over the last year and a half, 2 years? How has your video strategy evolved with that, and what kind of tactics have you found most successful?
Yeah, so much has changed in the last few years. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, but we've paid really close attention to where people are spending their time with media. So those media consumption trends have just become so much more important. It's been fun watching the audio space grow, especially podcasts. It's been fun watching social grow as well. But from a CTV perspective, that's something that we've really felt there's that measurability to now with the ability to track back to the arrivals. So that's something that's just become incredibly more and more important, especially as people are putting more time there. We've really focused on, refining our placements and our targeting From a placement perspective, we're always looking for those new placements, those new opportunities that are going to be high impact for the consumer, like the first impression unit that Ray showed earlier. Interactive spots have been fun as well, as people are, re-engaging with QR codes and being able to drive attention that way. So a lot of focus goes into the placements and making sure that we're part of a good user experience. We've also put a lot of emphasis on our targeting as well, making sure that we're, leveraging as much as we can our addressable targeting, making sure in that large format placement that we are talking as much as we can in a one-to-one format. And then where we can't reach people in an addressable format, really looking for that very personalized targeting, having close conversations with our vendor partners to make sure that we're reaching consumers as best as possible. The measurement piece just becomes continually more important, of course, as well.
Can I add to that?
Jump in there.
Yeah, I think just going back to the longitudinal lift studies too, you all are very data-driven. So you're analyzing, your campaigns you've launched, but you also have this wealth of past data, and you're digging into that as well to understand what it means. So we just encourage everyone to look at your entire data set and see how you can use it. You can learn from the past, even if there was a pandemic in the way. So I think you all are very, you come to us very proactively saying, this looks strange, this looks like an opportunity. So you take advantage of that existing data. It doesn't have to be, one agency this, one agency that. It really is a continuum. That longitudinal part of it is very important because it does take your high-value visitors longer probably to arrive in a destination.
I think that's a good point, especially with the winter campaign that we did initially during the pandemic. That was really highlighting the winter experiences, but also how people can travel safely in Michigan and reassure them that they can now come and travel. And I think those insights from that campaign are helping the work that we're doing now within that, that same CTV model. It really provided us with some great data so that we can really extend and really redefine and, pinpoint to how we wanted to define that campaign.
We're doing for time here. So what kind of maybe building off of your point there, what advice would you have for those in the room that are haven't really put their toes in the CTV waters yet, or are and still not sure about it?
Okay, I'll go. Fight for it. I think as we start thinking about growing budgets, even if it is from a smaller perspective, just having a conversation with your vendor partners, asking up front what type of measurement and targeting and placement opportunities do we have, and really getting in and getting the best opportunity possible, regardless of what the budget is, really looking to max out those dollars. I think the measurement piece is probably the biggest one, knowing that it's, if it is something you're testing for this first time, you are going to want to put an ROI to it. So being able to have that match back is helpful.
And I was just going to say that I think, from the Pure Michigan standpoint, we don't like to put all our eggs in one basket, right? And we want to make certain that we diversify our media campaigns and our approach so that we make certain that we are touching our target audiences and that relevancy. And while metrics are extremely important to that effort, there may be some other opportunities out there too, that we may look at that may not be as strong. But I think, as we continue to gear towards the future with the campaign, looking for some of these unique, I think, opportunities when it comes to digital and CTV. We always like to say, okay, we'll do a pilot. We'll see how it goes. And that's, that helps to get your foot, in and that you're going to do this test and then see how it goes for you, because I think you'll be surprised.
Back to the measurement piece. There's a certain point that, where scale matters, so minimum size to be measurable, at least from Arrivalist perspective. But I'd say get measurement into your RFPs, make it a mandatory. Don't wait and then, sign the IO and then ask, and how are you going to measure this? Because that becomes a problem for you and also for us. But also don't stop at the no. If someone says, no, we don't know how to interact with Arrivalist, let's say. I'll be real here. Probably Samsung, others hadn't heard of Arrivalist. And it was the travel industry saying, this is how we measure. These are our KPIs. We need physical arrivals and destinations. This is what we measure. They started to hear about us, and somebody, maybe you mentioned it, kind of collective demand. And I'll share a story. Just recently, there was another provider, a linear TV provider. They hadn't heard of us. And MMGY, another major agency that's here in the room, different states were saying, no, we need to be able to measure this. And we finally got on their radar, and they're going to become a partner as well. So we're just incredibly excited to be working with Samsung and these other brands and making media plans measurable vendor by vendor, partner by partner. So if you get a no, it could just come from a place they don't know the travel industry. You'd be amazed how many are selling, but they don't know travel and tourism. Don't assume they know your metrics. You have to educate them on what you need to see and talk to other agencies and other destinations to kind of build up that bargaining power, that collective demand. And then, you can be measuring the way we measure this.
Love it. All right. So, more about just industry-wide, going down the line here. What directions are you most excited to see CTV heading in? And are there any trends or tactics you're bringing into play this year?
Yep. I'm really excited to see how just the space evolves in general. Ray talked about AVOD and SVOD. I'm excited to see where that shakes out. Things like what's going to happen with Netflix, and will there be any consolidation or convergence? I think it'll just be an interesting conversation to watch play out. I think measurement, how many times have we said measurement up here? But the measurement of the overall, converging TV space, I think will be something that firms up in the next year or two as well. So a lot on the horizon to watch for.
Yeah, and I'm just looking forward to seeing how we can expand it more, right? As you mentioned, it's the current streaming, I think, platform is not sustainable right now with the number of options that are out there. And we're always looking for how we can get into some of those unique opportunities, especially for connected TV. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to expand and how it's going to net out and how we can just expand our presence, our footprint out there.
Yeah, and for us, it's simply been the growth, bringing on these premium brands as channel partners. And, our first pilot that we did together, we've grown in the last year or so. We have over 12 shared clients. So the more we can measure, the better it is for destinations, and the smarter their decisions can be. So
good. I know we were trying to leave a couple minutes for questions, which we do. We're wrapped. Laura, I don't know where you are in the voice of goddess. But we have 3 minutes. If there are any questions from the audience, we're happy to take them, I think.
When you did this campaign, I assume you were doing some sort of adding study as well, reach and recall and intent, and impact on intent. And I'm wondering if you saw any difference in target audiences in those metrics as you shifted to equity. What would assume your reach consumers went down, they might be down. I'm sorry, if you look at that and any trends you saw in impact.
Yeah, I think and that's part of the design this year for really to expand our target audiences, because I think prior to that we were pretty limited to our buckets who we were targeting, and it was the same target, honestly, that we've been targeting for the last 15 years. So working with MMGY and looking at all of their research plus our metrics from our campaign initiatives really has expanded the target audiences. Now we're up to 4 major groups of target audiences that we're going to work with on the campaign. So yeah, very insightful.
And also the data that we can provide on the TV side is all the TV viewership behavior. People that are visiting the Michigan.com website, how are they consuming content? What are they watching? Are they streaming more? Are they AVOD? Are they SVOD? So we can provide all that data back to MMGY and the team, and that can help inform future TV buys or their target audience as well.
And I think even if it isn't exactly the same strategy as we've evolved to, it still is a really good baseline for us. So a really good reference point on what was working, what could work. So just general indicators.
Hi. What a nice presentation. All members of that, your products are
just exceptional. And Arrivalist, I can't tell you how much we appreciate what you do. So yes, thank you. And the creativity of the media plan is really something. I'm curious about where that really good comprehensive plan takes you ultimately as a shopper, as someone to exploring and researching a travel location. I know the sites in Michigan are amazing, but where is that connectivity in that media plan that takes me to a very specific location that I might be researching? How's that facilitated? And I know it's a tough lift, coming from a television environment. So I'm really curious how that's working.
Yeah, so I think let's start first with the extension through the smart TV, the connected TV Samsung. So when we're driving individuals, we have a video there about Pure Michigan, providing them with an overview of what they can see and experience, but also linking back to Michigan.org, and that's critical. And we just did a total redesign on Michigan.org to redesign how we can serve up content to people coming to the website. So I think that's a really important point of all of this picture as well. It's just not one component on its own. It's integration and all these different pieces that are part of the overall strategy for the campaign working together. So once you get to Michigan.org, there now is the opportunity that based on your experiences or what you want to see and do, there are some of those advice, guidance, trip advisor, so to speak, to help individuals find out where they can go, what destination, if they want to go to Traverse City or Grand Rapids, to have those experiences.
We can tie it all back to the media. So we place our Samsung Pixel on that page. And we provide MMGY and the team reporting of people that saw our ads. They went to whatever landing page that they choose for us to put that code on, and provide all the data and metrics around that. So web attribution and conversion data as well. I think we're tapped, Laura, right?
Any more questions? Okay.
We're here all week.
Yes, thank you all so much.